Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Visit to Jelly Planet. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support this channel, you can certainly do so on Patreon. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, and there's a chat and direct mail function where we can talk back and forth. As a matter of fact, this episode is happening because of a direct mail back and forth with one of my patrons named Joseph. At any rate, if you're interested, you can always go down to the description. There's a link there. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, be glad to work with you. I've worked with folks now all over the world. If you're interested, all you have to do is go to the description section, and there's an email there. Just request more information. Okay, have you ever had an experience where you write it off at the time because of your interest or just because of your experience level? You write it off as not that interesting. And then you perhaps tell it to someone else and they give you that whole Pikachu, what? kind of thing. And then it kind of forces you to re-look at it and say, maybe it is an experience that other people would like to hear. Maybe I wrote it off too soon because it didn't check all of the excitement boxes for me. But I think this is one such experience, and it's because of Joseph and our little interaction back and forth on direct mail. And I love going back and forth with the patrons. That I'm presenting this right now. So you decide for yourself whether this was worthwhile sharing or not. I picked a star in the sky, and I usually do that just sometimes at random. Sometimes I've done a little research. I've been into astronomy ever since I was a kid. I mean, I had a paper route, and I used my first amount of money to go ahead and buy a refracting telescope. I just always been interested in space. And I was looking for typical G stars. Our sun is like a G2V, I think. And also red giants. Scientists have told us that these stars have what it takes to create planets that might be able to evolve life because they exist long enough in a relatively stable state such that life could evolve. You can't have one of these huge supernova type stars because they're huge and they don't live very long. And then, of course, they blow up and wipe out life within 100 light years. So these other stars, these red giants, these G-type stars, tend to hang around for billions of years. And therefore, they create the possibility, or they allow for the possibility of evolving life. I found a star which looked to me like it might be a G-type star, not too different from our sun. So I zoomed in on it, and of course I got the usual blackness, unconsciousness. And when I came to, I found myself in a solar system. The sun looked to be a G-type star to the best of my abilities, but it seemed brighter than our star. Astral eyes are definitely different from physical eyes. You can see a lot more with the astral. If you will it, you can see into the infrared and the ultraviolet and some other stuff too. But based on my judgment, it seemed brighter. What was in the solar system? Well, there was a huge gas giant that was very close to the star. And this part was quite beautiful. It was outgassing to the star. The star was, in essence, eating its large child. And that made for quite a beautiful plasma show. Now that I think back at it, it is quite beautiful. Well, and I wondered to myself, I wonder how long this has been going on, and I wonder how long it will go on. This was a giant gas giant. I mean, on the order of Jupiter, for instance. So I guess it had a lot of gas to give up, but it was quite beautiful watching that whole outgassing event. The next planet I found was about the size of Earth. Keep in mind, I'm just guessing here. It's kind of hard without comparisons right there. But it was a dead rock. I visited it quickly, and it was just a dead rock. I think there was some evidence of volcanic activity, but I certainly didn't see any atmosphere or any reason for life. So I abandoned it because it's life, really, that makes things interesting. Well, that and the light shows. Light shows are fun. Just like that one time I wanted to know what our galaxy looked like from the outside looking in, and all of a sudden I'm there in intergalactic space in this great emptiness looking at our galaxy, which was pretty darn far away. Just thinking to myself, how beautiful, seeing these billions of stars that made up our Milky Way galaxy, and thinking to myself, somewhere there's a little dot that is our sun. And everything I know, everybody I know is there. It's holy. If you've ever been in a church, whether you're religious or not, if you felt that feeling of awe, that's what it's like. Like you're in the presence of something that is so beautiful and so much bigger than you. That's what it feels like. Anyway, I went on to the next planet, and this one was a lot more interesting. It had an atmosphere. It was also about the size of the dead rocky planet, but it obviously was sustaining an atmosphere, and I saw water below. So I lowered myself into the planet. I soared around it for a bit, and there seemed to be a large, somewhat shallow sea, because I could see the bottom of this sea. And then in a couple other sections that were surrounding the sea, there was this marshy area. I don't know whether it was salt or fresh, who knows. But it was definitely these huge, huge swamps, these huge marshes. And those are the types of areas that can foster life on land, because there's an easy transition, evolutionarily speaking at least, where life from the sea can easily migrate onto land, quote unquote, even though it's kind of marshy. And then it could slip back into the water, and that whole process can go on for hundreds of thousands, millions of years, until finally sometimes creatures evolve that actually can exist full time on the land. So intrigued, I flew down into the shallow sea. I looked around the shallow sea, and there was a lot of volcanic sand I could see. So this was most probably a geologically active planet, which is kind of good, because if you want to have protection for your planet from your fierce sun, you need that magnetic protective shield that can surround your planet, helping to fend off coronal mass ejections and other types of effluent coming from a star. Now, as I was soaring down to the sea, I did look up in the sky, and the sun, it looked brighter. Once again, I don't know if it's my astral eyes, but it looked a lot brighter than our sun typically looks. So I think what we have here is a sun that is definitely brighter by a significant degree than our particular sun. So anyway, I went into the ocean. I saw this volcanic sand. I started swimming around. I didn't see a lot at first. And then, as I was swimming quite rapidly, I suddenly pulled up short. And there was a little school of all I can describe as jellies. And they were floating by in a pack. And I thought to myself, wow, there's life on this planet. Simple life, certainly, but there's life. And that's always interesting, because one of our big concerns here on Earth, as we struggle to get out there into the solar system and, of course, into the greater galaxy, we wonder to ourselves, are we the only life? Now, of course, we're not. But our typical mainline scientists wonder that, because until they've got some organism they can definitely say is not from Earth on their dissection table and they're tearing it apart, they're not going to believe that life exists elsewhere. So, if life does exist in a second place, not connected with Earth, well, then that probably means that life is everywhere. At least that's what the scientists say. And of course, I agree with that. Because if life is this weird thing that only evolves once in a billion, well, then you might conceivably only find it on one particular planet. But if it's in two places, well, that's different now. So now you're talking about that there's a definite case to be made for the ubiquity of life throughout our galaxy and indeed throughout the universe. I mean, if our galaxy is teeming with life, why not other galaxies? So I sat there, I kind of floated there, I guess, and watched these jelly things just kind of scoot on by. And they fluoresced as they swam by. And it seemed like they were fluorescing in sequence with each other. This tells me that perhaps there's some predation because, well, possibly there is. Because why else would they be schooling? And why this fluorescing in together? It, of course, could be some primitive way of communicating, some primitive way of saying, hey, everybody follow me, I'm the lead jelly, let's say. Or it could be some sort of way to confuse predators. Because if you as a predator are zoning in on this particular school and they start flashing all in unison, it's going to confuse you. I mean, it confused me for a brief second or two, and I've got this highly developed Earth mind. And if I was momentarily confused, then perhaps some predator on this planet would also be confused. So it makes sense. So I just floated there watching these things as they went by, looking at them as carefully as I could. I mean, they changed shape constantly. And that also seemed to be interesting because they also seemed to change shape, kind of grow a little bit of a tentacle, then it came back, and they all happened together, like they were in some sort of weird marching band where everybody, did the same thing at the same moment. It was quite beautiful to watch. And, now that I think about it, I wrote this thing off. I wrote it off because I was like, well, jellies, is that really interesting? You tell me. I don't know. I didn't think it was, but maybe it is. As I'm telling the story, it does sound a little bit more interesting. I sailed around a little bit more in the shallow sea. I did see these little stalks that were growing up out of the volcanic soil. Now, they weren't green, though. They were yellow and red. So there's probably some sort of sea plant life there. It's just not green in color. And perhaps these jellies eat these plants. It makes sense if they do, because if they're not eating other animals, then they're probably eating plants. I sailed around a bit longer and didn't see anything else really of interest. So I flew out, and went into one of these marshy sections. It was strange because when I first set foot, I had this reaction that, oh crap, is this mud going to get all over my feet? And of course, I immediately tell myself that that's a stupid thought, because no, it's not going to. But, when you're in a physical body, even when you go into your astral body, you still have these residual reactions to visceral types of stimuli. And certainly anyone who's ever plunged his foot, or God help you if you have boots on too, if you've plunged into really marshy soil, that feeling as the water kind of fills up your boot, or as the soil comes over your feet, feeling all slimy. But of course, I didn't feel that. And I started walking around the shore, because that's always a good way to see if there's anything going on. when I tripped across some little stocky plants that were growing on the land. They were also, I saw some yellow and some red ones, nothing green. They they looked like mini trees, but they weren't trees. They came up in a stalk that maybe went up as high as oh geez, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 inches. I don't know, maybe 15 centimeters, something like that. And they had little outgrowths that looked more like thorns than leaves, let's say. But some of them, some of the thorns had little yellow and red, I don't know what they were. I don't know if they were seeds or if they were little leaves of some sort, but they were kind of strewn in little patches. There was also stuff right on the edge of the sea and the marsh that looked like red or yellow algae. It looked different though. It looked, I kind of zoomed my eyes in and they looked more like rhizomes. They were very pointy. It was all very pointy. I don't know if that's some sort of defense mechanism perhaps. I don't know. But I started exploring around the sea edge, looking at these plants, and they grew in these little groups. And there'd be nothing, then another little group. And as I was walking along, I saw that there was a little jelly with little cilia, little legs underneath it. And it was crawling along one of these little stalks. And it was going out into the thorny edge, and it started, I guess, it wasn't nibbling, I didn't see any teeth, but it kind of enveloped one of these little yellow outcroppings, leaves, I don't know what other word to use. And it seemed to begin to absorb it. And while it was absorbing it, it started to fluoresce. So I was wondering, is this some evolved land version of the jellies that I'd seen? I guess that would make sense. Who knows how many eons it took for this little species of jelly to come out in the land, and then how many eons had to go by before it stopped going back into the water and coated itself probably with a thicker membrane to protect the moisture inside of it, such that it could exist in what to me looked like a pretty intense solar environment, as this sun was definitely beating down. I imagined that if I hadn't been in my astral body, I might be a little on the warm side. But luckily, that's not a problem when you're in your astral body. So this was quite fascinating. Now, at least it is now that I talk about it. I don't know why I wrote this off. And I had this experience a year ago, and I even wrote down a little journal entry, Jelly World, and I quickly talked about it. And I guess I just wrote it off. I didn't think it was interesting enough to discuss. So I'm really eager to see what you guys think. You know, if you think it was boring or something, I'll apologize, and I won't talk about this kind of stuff again. After that, I started, because keep in mind, I wasn't time traveling. This was just the present. So I started feeling the signal to return back home, and I was a little reluctant, but I guess I was writing it off again. Like, okay, there's some jelly people here or whatever. It's interesting, I guess. But, you know, there's no giant dinosaur things, which is kind of what you like. You want to see. The little kid inside me wants to see dinosaurs on some strange planet, but I'm on Jelly World. At any rate, that was my visit to Jelly Planet. I have a knack for naming planets, don't I? At any rate, if you thought that was interesting, let me know. I'll apologize once again if you didn't. I won't do that again. But at any rate, you know, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave those questions and comments. I love that stuff. And, you know, make sure you subscribe. And if you liked it, hit that like button. This is Rick, and as always, I will see you on the astral plane.